Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro activated what is known as the integral defense doctrine in response to the threats of aggression by the United States. In Honduras, the Attorney General Joel Zelaya has announced an investigation against the National Electoral Council for irregularities in the electoral process. And several foreign ministers have rejected the announcement made by Israel regarding the Rafah crossing and the authorization solely for outbound circulation. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. We begin with the information. We were saying it at the beginning. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has activated what is known as the integral defense doctrine, and this is in response to the threat of aggression by the United States. Maduro instructed security forces to study and practice prolonged popular resistance and permanent offensive in the face of Washington's threats in the region. The Venezuelan leader also explained that his model of power is comprehensive and not limited to public institutions, as it involves communal social power and social movements. He also maintained that his government dismantled the main criminal gangs, such as the now defunct Tren de Aragua and Tren del Llano, after and offered his security model to neighboring countries. He denounced also that the 2015 Opposition National Assembly stole $14 million from blocked accounts to distribute among its leaders.
No one or nothing will take it from us, not today, not ever. Have the certainty, the absolute certainty that no one will take the land or the destiny of the Venezuelan people. Sacred land, sacred destiny.
And in this context, the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro also affirmed that at present the nation has the most advanced police and security system in all its history.
Today, December 5th of 2025, I can say to Commander Chavez, wherever he is watching us today, we have the police system and of public security more complete and advanced of all of the history of the Republic in Venezuela and all of the historical times of the Bolivarian Revolution, thanks to you. Police of the homeland, thanks to you.
And on Friday, the Plus Ultra and Laser Airlines announced that the launch of an alternative route between the capitals of Venezuela and Spain, this with a stopover in Cartagena de Indias in Colombia. The new service will begin operating on Wednesday, December the 10th, 2 weeks after the cancellation of direct flights between the two countries following the unilateral closure of the Latin American nation's airspace decreed by the United States President Donald Trump. According to the Venezuelan airline Laser, the new proposed route will serve as an alternative for passengers who already had confirmed reservations. Plus Ultra explained that the operation will be carried out in interline connection with Laser and informed that travelers should check availability through their customer service center. And precisely following flight irregularities detected after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to close the airspace between the and surrounding Venezuela, Colombia's Transport Minister María Fernanda Rojas expressed her rejection to the imposition of air blockades in the region.
It is very important to do everything in our hands to prevent the blockade of the airspace. In this case, Venezuela's, but at any moment it could be ours, anytime now. Imagine if we had the sabotage that we have today, because the previous one was an OTAN, which instead of having technical and operational content, really had the intention of a more political blockade of the airspace. breaking the rules of international aviation, breaking the Chicago Convention, which is what establishes that rules for the respect of sovereignty as a central principle. That's what happened before, but right now we have a more serious situation, which has led some of those airlines that were flying to redouble their measures. The director of aeronautics will refer to that, but that is an issue that we need to address directly with the President of the Republic.
And furthermore, Rojas denounced recent cyber attacks and the manipulation of air positioning systems, which she described as sabotage attempts and a crime that threatens the security of the entire international community.
Muy importante que los medios sepan, se están emitiendo señales engañosas,
It is very important that the media knows that deceptive signals are being broadcast, cyber attacks, signals that aim to deceive positioning equipment and GPS devices. I believe that this goes beyond any crime, and I believe that there should be a statement, hopefully today, from the ICAO and international bodies. Because sabotaging an air operation anywhere in the world in today's technological age is a crime. We cannot allow this. The international community cannot allow this. Today it is Venezuela, tomorrow could be Colombia or any other country.
Hoy es Venezuela, mañana podría ser Colombia o cualquier otro país.
And this Saturday, several social and political movements around the world have called for an International Day of Peace in Latin America and the Caribbean amid the ongoing U.S. threats against the region. In this context, the International Anti-Imperialist Summit of Senegal voiced its support for Venezuela.
For the Bolivarian Revolution in the face of attacks from the United States and threats to invade Venezuela. No to war to Venezuela.
Now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Honduras, the Attorney General Joel Zelaya announced an investigation against the National Electoral Council for irregularities in the electoral process. More information on this, according to the instruction of the Attorney General, he has ordered the Technical Criminal Investigation Agency to immediately enter the headquarters of the electoral body to collect evidence, documents, and all the necessary material required by his office. While the country continues to await definitive results, the prosecutor has requested all these materials to investigate the numerous complaints of conspiracy, extortion, as well as the accusations made by 3 members of the National Electoral Council who, in the words of the prosecutor, are not fulfilling the interests of Honduras. And with the full arrival of electoral material in Tegucigalpa, the process enters a phase marked by allegations of massive manipulation and the citizens' demand to defend the popular will in the nation. Our colleague Karim Duarte provides us with more details.
El retorno completo de las actas a la capital.
The complete return of the tally sheets to the capital takes place in parallel with technical allegations of structural irregularities in the vote counting system, where it is warned that the platform may have redistributed votes among candidates and parties, indicating possible automated manipulation of the results.
Fraude automatizado, transferencia de votos.
Automated fraud, transfer of votes between candidates and parties. The system skipped boxes, moving votes from one candidate to another, and from one party to another, confirming the manipulation denounced in the audio recordings.
Manipulación denunciada en los audios.
Diversos sectores sociales
Various social sectors maintain that Honduras is facing an attempted electoral coup and call for the defense of democracy against what they consider a technological alteration of the popular mandate, insisting that the people must not give in to pressures or narratives that seek to normalize manipulation.
No, ¿verdad? Al golpe y no a un
No, right? to the coup, and not to a hacked trap, which is what they are showing now more than ever. A people in resistance and a people in democracy will rise again, and that is what we want, that the entire population of Honduras rises up. Do not be afraid, we are united, and now more than ever democracy will be respected.
Mientras tanto, las Fuerzas Armadas
Meanwhile, the armed forces emphasize that they fulfilled their duty of safeguarding and transporting the material throughout the territory, stressing that their actions were subject to the scrutiny of the citizenry and the international missions that observed the process.
Bueno, las Fuerzas Armadas siempre comprometidos con la
Well,
democracia.
the armed forces have always been committed to democracy. We have fulfilled our duty, and as I reiterate, those who can say whether we did so or not are you. On our part, we have complied, but it is you and the population, the ones who went out to vote on November 30th, as well as the international observers, who can say what our actions were, and we leave satisfied.
Decir cuál fue nuestro accionar y nos vamos nosotros satisfechos.
El proceso se tensiona aún más.
The process becomes even more tense following the complaint by Councillor Marlon Ochoa, who points to a mega fraud based on 13,246 tally sheets with inconsistencies between the biometric system and the preliminary election results transmission system, equivalent to 982,140 to inflated votes for the bipartisan system.
Para teleSUR, desde Tegucigalpa, Honduras, Karim Duarte.
And in Colombia, the ruling party Historical Pact registered its candidates for parliament with the National Registry. Our correspondent Hernán Tovar with more details on this.
En Bogotá, el partido de izquierda Pacto
In Bogotá, the left-wing party, Pacto Histórico, registered its candidates for both the House of Representatives and the Senate with the National Registry. The lists were drawn up as a result of its internal consultation held on October 26, which also selected the party's presidential candidate, who spoke about the expectations for winning a majority in the Colombian Congress, with support from the popular sectors.
No son el resultado estas candidaturas.
These candidates are not the result of elite agreements or hand-picked appointments, but rather the living expression of the will of the people, who are calling for a new direction for the country. In addition, in this participatory exercise, we ratify democratic achievement and recognize the fundamental role of women in politics. We restructured our closed lists to be gender balanced by intercalating a woman or a man in each line.
Esta fuerza política y sus aspirantes al
This
Congreso
political force and its congressional candidates are guided by the fight against the boycott by opposition sectors of the reforms promoted by the government of President Gustavo Petro in the Legislative Congress.
Nosotros llegaremos al Congreso a profundizar.
We will arrive at Congress to deepen the social reforms that the traditional parties have hindered and obstructed, and here we have to talk about very specific things. We can no longer wait for healthcare reform. We can no longer wait for agricultural jurisdiction. We can no longer wait for political reforms so that clientelism, political maneuvering, and mafias do not interfere in public affairs, and so that free citizens can choose who will be their representatives in political power.
Quien elija quiénes van a ser sus representantes en el poder político.
En este contexto,
In this context, it was known that the National Electoral Council gave the green light for the different political movements and organizations that make up the Pacto Histórico to merger, a great convergence that allows them to strengthen their position to face the upcoming elections as a political power, whose application and approval had been delayed and torpedoed by the Council.
It means we won, because the National Electoral Council delayed granting legal status to the Historic Pact until the last minute. Today, the Democratic Pole has disappeared, the Patriotic Union has disappeared, the Communist Party has disappeared, progressives, and a new life has been born, which is a political project to continue governing Colombia for a long time, to make changes and transformations. It is called the Pacto Histórico-Political Movement.
El movimiento político pacto histórico.
Just as the NEC has played a political role rather than a legal one, like a political party opposing change in the unity of the Colombian people, so too has the registry. The registrar's office was responsible for torpedoing and traumatizing the entire popular consultation process, therefore vigilance is necessary.
Por lo tanto, es necesario vigilancia. Las elecciones para elegir los parlamentarios
The elections to choose members of the parliament in Colombia will be held on March 8, 2026. 100 candidates for the Senate and 30 for lists for the House of Representatives have registered with the registry.
Hernán Darío Tobar Gaitán, teleSUR, Bogotá, Colombia.
And we go now to St. Lucia, as on Friday, Philippe J. Pierre was sworn in as Prime Minister for his second straight term, following his St. Lucia Labour Party's resounding victory in the December 1st general elections in the island. Pierre took the oath of office at the government house in Montfortune in the presence of several regional heads of government and dignitaries, among them the Prime Ministers of Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, and Nevis, and also the former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Rolf Gonsalves. During his speech, Pierre outlined his government's priorities for the new term, including confronting youth unemployment, accelerating digital transformation, and further modernizing the education system. Furthermore, he pledged that his administration would continue prioritizing vulnerable groups and vowed to march forward with purpose and discipline as his administration strives to make the island the best place to live and work.
Our administration will continue to remember the vulnerable. We cannot speak of preserving human dignity as the basic needs of the vulnerable and differently able, so that everyone can have a dignified existence. In our new term, we will continue to target interventions to those most in need.
We have a second short break coming up now, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow the page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. This Friday, several foreign ministers rejected the announcement made by Israel regarding the Rafah crossing and the authorization solely for outbound circulation. The foreign ministers of Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt have objected to Israel's announcements to open in the coming days the Rafah border crossing to allow exclusively the departure of Palestinians from Gaza into Egypt. In a joint statement, they demanded that Israel adhere to the U.S. plan, including its provisions on maintaining the crossing, which envisions movement in both directions, guaranteeing the population's freedom of circulation. They also reaffirmed that they would continue working on the basis of that plan. And another topic, Israel is carrying out new attacks against residential areas in southern Lebanon, increasing tensions and regional stability. Despite the ceasefire agreement that is in place, these assaults are carrying out after the prior threats from Israel, which forced the Lebanese to evacuate several towns in the southern border region. Authorities reported that these Israeli attacks caused considerable damage to buildings and civilian homes, but no casualties or injuries were reported. Additionally, they asserted that these actions by Israel represent a flagrant disregard for international agreements and the ceasefire declaration that is in place and came into effect on November 27th of 2024. Until November of this year, Israel committed over 5,000 violations of the ceasefire, resulting in 309 deaths, 598 injuries, and structural damage as well. In other news, Pakistan and Afghanistan exchanged heavy fire along their border late on Friday. Officials from both countries reported on this. Afghan Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said that Pakistani forces launched attacks in a district of Kandahar province. For his part, a spokesman for Pakistani Prime Minister accused Afghan forces of unprovoked firing along the Yemen border. The exchange came 2 days after a new round of peace talks between the South Asian neighbors ended without a breakthrough. Ali Mohammad Hakmal, head of the Kandahar's information department, reported that Pakistani forces attacked with light and heavy artillery and that mortar fire had struck civilian homes, adding that the clashes ended as both sides agreed to stop. We move on to other topics. In Sri Lanka, the toll from adverse weather caused by Cyclone Ditwa has risen to 600. Management Center, the atmospheric phenomenon and its remnants have affected more than 2 million people nationwide. 4,164 houses have been destroyed and around 67,500 others have suffered partial damage. In this regard, the Meteorological Department states that in the coming days, an increase in rainfall is expected in some parts of the country due to the monsoon effects in the region, and urges the population to maintain safety measures, limit interstate travel, and stock up on basic supplies, this to minimize unnecessary trips outside the home. And we go back to the Caribbean because on Friday, for the 6th consecutive week, Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel returned to visit the areas affected by Hurricane Melissa in the eastern region of the country. In the municipality of Tercer Frente, located in the Sierra Maestra mountain range, the head of state inspected the rehabilitation work on roads, housing, and basic services, accompanied by the national and local authorities. The itinerary included a visit to the Coffee Experimental Center, where Hurricane Melissa caused damage to almost 90% of the infrastructure and also affected coffee plantations and other crops. He also visited the Mario Muñoz Monroy Educational Center, which suffered severe structural damage, mainly to its roofs and carpentry. With this information, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.